The moment I touched the horse, I felt something shift, not just in the stable, but inside me. My fingers trembled against its coat, my heart pounding like a war drum. The house was empty, my husband miles away, and I was truly alone for the first time in years. Or so I thought. A single action, so small, so insignificant, set off a chain of events that would rip my life apart. I did not know it yet, but I had crossed an invisible line, a line that once broken could never be repaired, and that was just the beginning. I never thought my life would unravel in the way it did. I was a woman of routine, a wife who knew her place, a person who never sought trouble. My husband Elian was a man of strict order, his days planned to the minute, his expectations clear. We lived on a quiet property, far from the chaos of the city, where the only sounds were the rustling trees and the occasional whinny from the stables. Elian loved his horses more than anything, more than me, I sometimes believed. He spent hours in the stables, grooming, training, and whispering to them like they held his secrets. When he was home, his mind was there, not with me. When he was away on business, his instructions were clear. Do not go near the horses. They are not yours to handle. I obeyed, at least for the first few years of our marriage. It was easier that way. Elian liked control, and I had learned to give it to him. But something in me had begun to change. A quiet rebellion that grew louder with every lonely night, every conversation that felt more like a transaction than a marriage. That day, the house felt particularly hollow. Elian had left at dawn, his truck disappearing down the winding dirt road. He would be gone for 3 days, attending some equestrian event where he would shake hands with people who understood his world. I was not part of that world. By noon, I had done everything I was supposed to do. Cleaned the house, made the bed, and prepared dinner for one. But an invisible pull kept dragging my attention to the stables. The horses stood in their stalls, their eyes calm, their movements slow. And then there was him, the black stallion. Elian prized possession, a creature he spoke about with more tenderness than he ever used for me. Midnight was his name, sleek and powerful, a beast that made grown men pause. I had watched Elian with him before. See the way he moved around the animal, how Midnight responded to his presence like they were bound by some unspoken connection. I was not allowed near him, but I was alone. No one would know. With careful steps, I approached the stall. Midnight lifted his head, his dark eyes locking onto mine. There was no fear, no resistance. He let me come closer, let me run my fingers along his strong neck. His warmth seeped into my skin, and for the first time in what felt like years, I felt alive. I exhaled, a breath I did not even realize I was holding. It was just a touch, just a moment, but deep in my gut, something felt off. A presence, a shift in the air. I turned my head slowly, my heart stuttering. I was alone, was I not? But that was when I saw it. A shadow, watching. The shadow moved, just a flicker at the edge of my vision, but enough to send a shiver up my spine. My breath hitched as I turned, scanning the dimly lit stable. The stalls stretched down both sides, hay scattered across the wooden floor, dust swirling in the golden afternoon light filtering through the cracks. But there was no one there. I swallowed hard, my pulse quickening. I was alone. I had to be. Midnight let out a soft huff, his warm breath hitting my cheek as if urging me not to be afraid. I forced a smile, whispering, "It is just us, boy." My fingers trailed over his sleek coat again, this time with more confidence. A rush of something unfamiliar surged through me, something daring, something forbidden. The house had always been my cage, my world reduced to cooking, cleaning, and waiting for someone who never truly saw me. But here, standing beside this powerful creature, I felt something stir inside me. The afternoon stretched into evening, and I found myself lingering in the stable longer than I should have. Midnight followed my every move, his deep eyes watching me with an intelligence that almost felt human. I whispered to him, telling him things I had never spoken out loud. My loneliness, my resentment, my craving for something more. He listened, and I kept talking. By the time I returned to the house, the sky had turned a deep indigo, the first stars appearing like scattered embers. I tried to push the strange feeling away, convincing myself that nothing had changed. But as I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, my mind kept returning to the way Midnight had looked at me. The next day, I told myself I would not go back, that what had happened was a slip, a moment of weakness, but by midday, my resolve had crumbled. I found myself standing at the stable doors again, my fingers resting on the worn wood. The pull was stronger now, undeniable. As soon as I stepped inside, Midnight's ears flicked toward me, his muscles shifting as if he had been waiting. A dangerous kind of excitement buzzed through me. I reached for the brush, my movements slow, careful. I had watched it done 1,000 times before, but never with my own hands. Midnight remained still, his massive frame unmoving as I ran the bristles through his coat. Every stroke calmed me, every breath I took syncing with his. Hours passed. I fed him, led him around the paddock, whispered to him like he was the only soul who truly understood me. And for the first time in years, I felt understood, but something was changing, and I did not realize it until it was too late. That night, I dreamt of hoofbeats echoing through the house, of shadows moving just beyond my sight. I woke up breathless, the taste of fear thick on my tongue. But it was just a dream, or so I thought. The next morning, I found something that stopped me cold. The stable door was open. My hands trembled as I stepped inside, my heart hammering against my ribs. Midnight stood in his stall, unharmed, but something was different. A single strand of long, dark hair rested on the wooden ledge. Not mine, and not his. Someone had been here, watching, waiting. I spun around, my breath coming in sharp gasps. My mind raced through the possibilities, but no matter how I tried to reason it away, a single thought kept repeating itself. I was not alone. That evening, I locked the house doors, something I had never felt the need to do before. Every creak of the old wood made my skin crawl. The lights flickered, the wind howled against the windows, and then a sound, not from inside the house, from the stables. I rushed to the window, my breath fogging up the glass. The barn doors were slightly ajar, swaying with the wind. My stomach dropped. I had closed them. I was sure of it. Panic clawed at my throat. Grabbing the nearest thing that could be used as a weapon, a fireplace poker, I stepped outside. The night air was thick, suffocating. The ground felt damp beneath my bare feet as I moved toward the barn. The door groaned as I pushed it open. The scent of hay and horse sweat filled my lungs. Midnight's ears flicked, but he did not move. His eyes, however, were locked on something behind me. I spun around, the poker raised, but there was nothing but the suffocating darkness. My mind screamed at me to leave, to run back to the safety of the house, but I did not move, because deep down I knew. Something had changed, and there was no turning back now. The moment I turned back to the horse, I knew something was wrong. Midnight's body was tense, his muscles coiled like a spring, his ears flicking toward the darkness outside the stable. His breath came in slow, measured huffs, but his eyes, those deep, knowing eyes, were locked onto something beyond my sight. The night stretched around me, silent except for the occasional rustling of the wind against the wooden beams. My grip on the fireplace poker tightened. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to retreat, to run back to the house, to bolt the doors, and pretend this night had never happened. But I could not move. Something was out there, watching, waiting, and then just as I took a cautious step back, I heard it. A creak, software deliberate, coming from the far end of the stable. My chest tightened. I swallowed, my throat dry as I forced my feet to stay grounded. My mind scrambled for logic. Perhaps the wind had knocked something over, or maybe an animal had wandered in. But deep inside, I knew better. My fingers trembled as I reached for the lantern hanging by the stall. The flame flickered when I lifted it, casting a warm glow that barely reached beyond a few feet. Midnight shifted beside me, his tail swishing, his nostrils flaring as he let out a deep, slow breath. The creak came again, closer this time. I lifted the lantern higher, stepping forward, my heartbeat hammering so loudly I was sure whoever, or whatever, was here could hear it too. And then, a shadow moved. My breath hitched as I whipped the lantern toward it. The light caught the edge of something human. Someone was here. I choked on a gasp, my body frozen in place. A figure stood at the far end of the stable, half hidden behind the wooden beams. Their frame was tall, broad-shouldered, their posture eerily still. I opened my mouth to speak, to demand who they were, why they were on my property, but the words never left my lips. Because in the dim light I saw it, their eyes, dark, unblinking, fixed on me. A cold sweat broke out along my spine. The figure didn't move, didn't flinch, just watched. Midnight let out a sharp snort, pawing at the ground as if sensing my fear. The poker in my hand felt useless, the weight of it suddenly insignificant against the presence in front of me. And then the figure stepped forward, a slow, deliberate movement, one foot in front of the other. No hesitation, no rush. My knees locked, my grip tightened. My breath came in shallow, rapid bursts, and then I saw the glint of something in their hand. Metal, a knife, my stomach twisted. The air in my lungs turned to ice. I stumbled back, nearly dropping the lantern, my free hand grasping blindly at Midnight's reins, and that was when the figure spoke. A voice, low, measured, familiar. "You should not have touched him." A sharp, electric jolt shot through my spine. I knew that voice. I had heard it 1,000 times before, but it did not make sense. It could not be. He was supposed to be gone, but there he was, standing in the darkness, a knife glinting in his hand. My husband! A sickening chill wrapped around my body. My mind refused to process what I was seeing, refused to accept the twisted reality of it. He was supposed to be out of town. He was supposed to be miles away. But he was not. He was here, and he had been watching me all along. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. Midnight stomped his hoof, agitated by the tension in the air. I forced myself to speak, my voice barely above a whisper. Why are you here?" His lips curled into something that was not quite a smile, not quite a sneer. His fingers flexed around the knife. "I never left." My stomach lurched, my skin turned to ice. "What?" He took another step forward, slow, unrelenting. "I saw everything," he murmured. "Every touch, every whisper, every time you disobeyed me." A sharp inhale cut through my chest. My pulse pounded against my ribs. This was not just about the horse. This was about control, about ownership, about something far more sinister than I had ever imagined. He had been watching me, not just tonight, not just yesterday, for days, for weeks. And I had never known. My breath turned shallow, my body screaming at me to move, to run, to do anything other than stand there, trapped in his gaze. But I was frozen, trapped, like an animal in a cage, like a horse in a stall. He tilted his head slightly, his gaze unwavering. "You belong to me," he said, "not to him." Midnight shifted beside me, his body pressing against mine as if sensing my distress. The warmth of him was the only thing keeping me grounded. keeping me from collapsing beneath the weight of my fear. I had to do something. I had to get out. My grip tightened on the poker, my muscles coiled, ready to move. I knew I had only seconds before he closed the distance between us. And then he lunged, a flash of silver, a burst of movement. I barely had time to react. My body moved on instinct, years of submission snapping like a frayed rope. I ducked, my arm swinging blindly. The poker connected with something solid. A sickening crack as metal met bone, a grunt, a curse. The knife clattered to the ground. I did not hesitate. I turned and ran. The stable doors burst open as I stumbled into the night, my breath coming in ragged gasps. My bare feet pounded against the damp earth, my mind screaming at me to keep going. Behind me, I heard him recover, heard the heavy stomp of boots against the wooden floor. He was coming. I pushed forward, the cold air slicing against my skin. The house was too far. The roads were too empty, but there was one place left. The forest. I veered off the path, crashing into the trees just as I heard him call my name. A sharp, taunting sound. I did not stop. I did not look back. I just ran. And in the darkness, for the first time in my life, I did not feel like prey. I felt like something else. Something that had been caged for too long, and now it was free. The silence in the stable was deafening. Midnight stood tall, his chest rising and falling in deep, measured breaths. The man who had spent years trying to control everything, me, the horse, this entire world, lay crumpled in the dirt, motionless. My hands trembled as I pressed them against my own chest, feeling the frantic beat of my heart. The weight of the moment settled on me like a crushing force, but beneath the terror, something else stirred. Relief. I stepped back, my breath catching in my throat. Midnight flicked his ears toward me, his dark eyes searching mine as if waiting for my next move. For the first time, I felt in control, not just of this moment, but of my own life. The knife lay inches from his fingers, its blade glinting under the lantern's glow. My stomach twisted, a war raging in my mind. I had two choices: take it, end this myself, make sure he never rose again, or run. I reached for the knife, a groan, a sharp, rattling breath. He was still alive. My fingers wrapped around the handle, the cool metal sending a shiver up my spine. Midnight shifted, his muscles tensed, watching him as if ready to strike again. A thought hit me then. What if he got up? What if he found me again? What if this was not over? I tightened my grip. My body screamed at me to act, to make sure he could never hurt me again. But I hesitated. If I did this, I would become something else. Something he had made me, something I did not want to be. I released the knife. It clattered onto the ground, the sharp sound making my whole body jolt. I could not do it. Instead, I turned and ran. The cold night air hit me like a slap, my bare feet pounding against the damp earth as I sprinted back toward the house. My breath came in ragged gasps, my pulse thundering in my ears. I did not stop until I reached the front door. Fumbling with the lock, I shoved my way inside, slamming the door shut behind me. My hands were shaking so violently that I could barely twist the bolt into place. And then, silence. I collapsed onto the floor, pressing my forehead against the cool wood, my body racked with shivers. My mind replayed everything that had just happened. The shadow in the stable, the gleam of the knife, Midnight's hooves striking him down. I wanted to believe it was over, but deep down, I knew better. I had to leave. Pushing myself up, I stumbled toward the bedroom. My hands moved on their own, yanking open drawers, stuffing a bag with the bare essentials, money, my passport, clothes. I could not stay here, not after this. A sharp knock at the door sent my stomach plummeting. I froze. My breath hitched. Another knock, then a voice, low, slurred with pain. Open the door. I clapped a hand over my mouth, biting back a cry. He was alive, and he was here. I backed away, my pulse hammering against my ribs. My mind raced. Had he followed me? Had he dragged himself back to the house, determined to finish what he started? The doorknob rattled. "I know you are in there." His voice was weaker now, strained. "Open the door." Tears burned my eyes. My body screamed at me to run, to escape out the back door, to disappear into the night. But something inside me snapped. I had spent too long being afraid. I squared my shoulders, wiping at my face with shaking fingers. My heart still pounded, but a different kind of fire burned in my chest now. I would not let him win. Moving slowly, I stepped toward the door. My hand hovered over the lock. Then, in a calm, steady voice, I said, "No." Silence. A long, ragged exhale. Then, "You think this is over?" His voice was barely above a whisper. "You have no idea what you have done." I closed my eyes, my fingers curled into fists. "I know exactly what I have done." Another beat of silence, then the shuffle of footsteps retreating into the night. I did not move, not until the sun began to rise, spilling light through the curtains. Only then did I dare to breathe again. But I knew this was not over. It never would be. I did not sleep. Morning arrived in a blur, the golden light spilling through the windows, feeling out of place after the horror of the night before. The house was still, the world outside too quiet. I had expected him to come back, to try again, but he was gone, for now. I kept the doors locked, my mind running through every possibility. I needed to leave, but where would I go? How far would I have to run before I felt safe? I found myself drawn back to the stable, my feet moving before my mind could protest. Midnight was still there, standing near the stall door as if waiting for me. The moment I stepped inside, he let out a low whinny, nudging my shoulder with his nose. I ran my fingers over his mane, my throat tightening. "We have to go," I whispered. "He will come back." Midnight's ears flicked forward, his gaze locking onto mine. There was an understanding in his eyes, a silent agreement. I turned away, moving to the back of the stable where the old saddle sat unused. My hands worked quickly, tightening the straps, my movement steady despite the storm raging inside me. When I led Midnight outside, the early morning light bathed us in gold. The wind carried the scent of damp earth and pine, the world still untouched by the chaos that had unraveled in the dark. I hesitated. One last glance toward the house, the place where I had been trapped for so long, the place where he had tried to break me. But he had failed. I took a deep breath, swinging myself onto Midnight's back. He shifted beneath me, powerful and steady. I did not look back again. With a gentle squeeze of my legs, I urged him forward. And together, we rode toward freedom. The road stretched endlessly before me, an open canvas of possibility. The morning sun warmed my skin, the wind whispered against my face, and midnight moved beneath me with a quiet confidence. I should have been terrified, lost, uncertain, but instead, I felt something else entirely. Light. For the first time in years, I was not bound to a place I dreaded, not waiting in the silence of a home that had never really felt like mine. I was not standing in the shadows, invisible and unheard. I was here, in motion, untethered. And yet, the weight of everything I had left behind still pressed on my chest. Would he come after me? Would he wake, bloodied and bruised, and set out to find me? Or would he sit there in the dirt, realizing finally that he had lost? A part of me wanted to believe it was over, that he would let me go, that he would see there was nothing left to take from me. But men like him never let go. They never believe they have lost. They just wait. I closed my eyes for a brief moment, inhaling deeply. I had spent too many years afraid of what he would do next, Too many nights lying awake trying to predict his moods, his anger, his silence. That was not living, and I refused to live that way anymore. The question was, what now? I had no real plan, no clear path forward. The weight of that realization should have been suffocating, but instead it thrilled me. For so long, my world had been carefully constructed around him. Every choice I made, every word I spoke, every breath I took had revolved around what he wanted, what he needed, what he expected. Now for the first time, I had no one to answer to, and I had no idea where to go. Did I disappear? Change my name? Build a new life somewhere far away? Or did I turn around, go back, and end this once and for all? I swallowed hard, shaking my head. That was what he wanted, for me to come crawling back, for me to return to him on his terms, broken and obedient. I had already made my choice. I was never going back. Midnight moved smoothly beneath me, his steady breathing grounding me. He had saved me in more ways than one. I had spent years thinking he was nothing more than my husband's prized possession, an animal that belonged to him just like I did. But Midnight was not his, and neither was I. He had been waiting just like me, waiting for the moment to break free, to take back what had been stolen from him. In a way, we had freed each other. I ran my fingers along his mane, feeling the strength beneath my touch. I had always been told to stay away from him, and now he was the only thing I trusted. A bitter laugh slipped from my lips. Funny how the one thing I had been forbidden to touch was the very thing that had saved my life. The miles stretched on, the landscape shifting around me, fields, forests, empty roads that seemed to stretch into forever. I had no destination, but I knew one thing. I was not stopping. I could not stop. Not until I was sure he was truly behind me. But would I ever be sure? Would I ever reach a point where I could close my eyes at night and not wonder if he was standing outside my door? Would I ever walk down a quiet street without looking over my shoulder? Or had he won after all, not by keeping me there, but by making sure I would never feel safe anywhere else? I tightened my grip on the reins. He had not won, because I was still moving. And as long as I kept moving, as long as I refused to live in fear, he would never truly have power over me again. Maybe you are wondering why I did not fight harder. Maybe you think I should have stayed, should have ended it right then and there, should have picked up that knife and made sure he could never come after me again. Maybe you're right. Maybe I should have. But tell me, if you had spent years learning to be silent, to be small, to be nothing, would you have been able to break free in just one night? Or would you have done exactly what I did? Run, because running was not cowardice. Running was survival. And maybe, just maybe, survival was the first step towards something greater. I could feel the past pressing at the edges of my mind, trying to drag me back, trying to remind me of the life I had left behind, the bruises no one saw, the words spoken like knives, cutting deeper than any wound, the nights spent waiting for his footsteps, for the moment his anger would boil over. But that life was behind me now, and I would not let it catch me again, not ever. I do not know where this road will take me. Maybe to a place where no one knows my name, where I can rebuild myself from the ground up, maybe to the end of the world itself. But I do know this, I am never looking back, not for him, not for the past, not for anyone. What would you have done? Would you have fought? Would you have stayed? Would you have ended it once and for all? Or would you have run just like I did? Maybe you think I was weak. Maybe you think I should have finished it. But here is what I know. I am free. And maybe sometimes that is the only justice that truly matters. If this story made you think, if it made you feel something, fear, anger, triumph, then let me know. What would you have done in my place? Would you have fought? Would you have run? Or would you have done something else entirely? Let me hear your thoughts in the comments. Like, subscribe, and stay for more. Because sometimes The truth is far stranger than fiction.